We begin in the NFL with Thursday night football as the Philadelphia Eagles beat the Minnesota Vikings 34-28. For the Vikings, Kirk Cousins went 31 of 44, had 364 passing yards, 4 touchdowns. Justin Jefferson had a great performance, 11 receptions, 159 receiving yards for the Eagles. Jalen Hurts went 18 of 23, had 193 passing yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception, and Swift, the running back for the Eagles, had a sensational performance. 28 carries, 175 rushing yards, 1 touchdown. So, my biggest takeaway from the Eagles 34-28 win over the Minnesota Vikings is, let's start off with the Philadelphia Eagles. Let's start off with their offense. Offensively, they put up 34 points against the Vikings defense, but this is the Vikings defense that was one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year. And the Eagles, they did put up 34 points, and they had 259 rushing yards, but I wasn't really impressed with Jalen Hurts. You look at Jalen Hurts so far in these first 2 games against the Patriots and against the Vikings. He's had 2 turnovers already in 2 games this season. Last year, it took Jalen Hurts 7 games to reach 2 turnovers. Also, that Eagles offense is kind of out of rhythm. You saw Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown on the sideline arguing a little bit. Now, these two are great friends. Jalen Hurts and A.J. Brown have a great relationship. But we saw A.J. Brown on the sideline a little frustrated with Jalen Hurts. He was frustrated. But I think also a part of that is because A.J. Brown is seeing Justin Jefferson on the other side have over 150 receiving yards for the game and a whole bunch of receptions and helping that Vikings offense produce offensively. And he feels like, man, I'm not really performing the way that I am accustomed to performing. And also on his same team last night, Devontae Smith had a hell of a game. 4 receptions, 131 receiving yards, 1 touchdown. So I feel like A.J. Brown was a little frustrated because his role wasn't as big last night against the Vikings as he would like it to be. He wants to have a bigger role and have a better performance. Last night, A.J. Brown only had 4 receptions for 29 receiving yards. But what A.J. Brown has to realize is last night wasn't about him. It was about DeAndre Swift. Last night, Swift, 28 carries, 175 rushing yards. He was the player of the game for the Philadelphia Eagles last night. Player of the game. So I have to give the Philadelphia Eagles some credit for their ability to run the football last night, and they created running lanes for Swift. But they didn't protect Jalen Hurts last night the way that I saw them protect him last year. This Vikings defense, again, was one of the worst defenses in the NFL last year. They sacked Jalen Hurts last night 4 times. They got to Jalen Hurts 4 times last night. So that's something that we got to keep an eye on. Can they run the football? Of course. They ran the football effectively last night. But they have to protect Jalen Hurts, and Jalen Hurts has to protect the football. Last night, Jalen Hurts had an interception in the first half, and I was completely shocked because that was something that Jalen Hurts did a great job of last year. He protected the football. Also, defensively, the Philadelphia Eagles, I have not been impressed with this Eagles defense in the first 2 games of the season. They've given up 326 yards passing total average in the first 2 games. 326 yards passing per game to Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins. They got Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins actually looking like they are elite quarterbacks, and neither of them are elite quarterbacks. Kirk Cousins is good. Mac Jones is average at best. I'm being nice. But Mac Jones and Kirk Cousins threw parties on that Eagles defense. This is the Eagles defense that has Brandon Graham up front. They have Fletcher Cox up front. In the secondary, you got big play Darius Slay, Blankenship as well, Maddox in that secondary. And so this Eagles defense has not impressed me in these first 2 weeks of the season. They have not. And remember last year in the Super Bowl against Patrick Mahomes, that Philadelphia Eagles defense did not get one sack in the Super Bowl. Not one time did they get to Patrick Mahomes in the Super Bowl. And then in the NFC Championship game, the 49ers ran out of quarterbacks. They ran out of quarterbacks. So I'm starting to wonder if that Philadelphia Eagles defense was overrated last year. They might have been a tad bit overrated because from the last few times I've seen that defense on the field, they have not played to their standards. They have not played to their standard that they set throughout the regular season last year, and they got to a 14-3 record and was the number 1 seed in the NFC. And then remember, even before the NFC Championship game, they played Daniel Jones in the divisional round of the playoffs last year. So I got questions about Philly right now. Yes, they are 2-0. So when you're 2-0, you got to give them credit for still being able to win games even when they're not at their best. But against the Patriots, they were up in that game 16-0. They got outscored 20-9 the rest of the way in that game. And then last night in week 2 on a Thursday night matchup against the Vikings, they were up 27-7, and they allowed the Vikings to climb back into the game and get the score within 6 points. The Eagles only won 34-28 last night. So, yes, the Eagles are 2-0. Yes, the Eagles fans should be happy about being 2-0. But this Philadelphia Eagles team in these first 2 weeks have not resembled the team that went 14-3 last year in the regular season. Now let's get to the Minnesota Vikings. Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson, they put on sensational performances last night in this game. And their offense is Kirk Cousins or bust because they have no running game to speak of offensively at all. So remember, they let go of Dalvin Cook. They moved on from Dalvin Cook, and now in their backfield, they got Alexander, Madison, and they got Chandler, their running backs. But these guys have not been able to hold on to the football. In 8 quarters, in 2 games for the Minnesota Vikings so far this season, they have 6 fumbles. 6 fumbles. So they're turning the ball over a lot. Defensively, they can't stop the run. Remember, they brought in new defensive coordinator Brian Flores, who knows his defense. And despite having Brian Flores, who I believe is a great defensive coordinator and a great coach overall, who deserves a head coaching job, by the way, despite having Brian Flores, this Vikings defense still is not very good. Yes, they had 4 sacks last night on Jalen Hurts, but they can't stop the run. They cannot stop the run. They gave up 259 rushing yards last night. 259. And then they also struggle in the back end. I know that Jalen Hurts didn't have a great performance last night, but that Vikings secondary is not very good. So Vikings are 0-2. Next week they have the Chargers at home. So they could possibly be 0-3 to start the season. And then week 4, they are in Carolina. That's a game they should win. But then week 5, they are home against Patrick Mahomes. So it's a possibility that in the first 5 weeks of the season, the Minnesota Vikings could be 1-4. And this is why I told everyone that Minnesota, they're not winning the NFC North this year. The Packers and Lions are both better football teams than the Minnesota Vikings are. I just don't believe in Minnesota. I love the way Kirk Cousins and Justin Jefferson are playing. They have great chemistry. But their defense and their team overall is not good enough. They're not good enough. So those are my takeaways from the Thursday night matchup last night. Eagles improved to 2-0 with a 34-28 win over the Vikings. Vikings fall to 0-2 on the season.